We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. International environmental law plays a crucial role in integrating environmental protection into the global economy over the long term and addressing specific environmental threats. It establishes a framework for international cooperation requiring states to adopt national policies aimed at preventing and controlling environmental degradation. This body of law is composed of treaties, conventions, and customary international law, all designed to safeguard the global economy, environment. Key principles such as precautionary principle, polluter pays principle, sustainable development, and the concept of common but differentiated responsibilities are fundamental to international environmental law. These principles serve as a guiding norms for nations in formulating legal frameworks and policies that mitigate harm while ensuring that responsibilities are distributed equitably between the developed and the developing nations. Over the years, the importance of international environmental law has grown significantly due to the increasing emphasis on transnational and international dimensions of environmental challenges. This body of law encourages states to recognize the necessity of collaborative efforts, compelling them to not only comply with the legally binding commitments within the various treaties and conventions, but also to remain dedicated to broader ecological protection. The significance of international cooperation cannot be overstated, as environmental threats often transcend the national borders. Consequently, the states must be willing to work together, provided they perceive tangible benefits from such cooperation. The necessity for international collaboration becomes particularly evident in instances where environmental impacts are global or transboundary. Examples include climate change, which affects the entire planet, and pollution that spreads across the shared water bodies like the Great Lakes. Additionally, international cooperation is essential when activities such as trade of elephant ivory or commercial whaling contribute to environmental harm. In such cases, the collective action is required to regulate and curb destructive practices. Similarly, global conservation efforts, including those aimed at preserving biodiversity, require coordinated financial and technical support, further reinforcing the importance of international cooperation, whether through legally binding treaties or non-binding soft law arrangements. Effective solutions to environmental challenges demand a multilateral approach. Several key international agreements exemplify the efficacy of international environmental law in addressing pressing ecological concerns. One of the most significant treaties in this domain is the Montreal Protocol, which stands as a remarkable success story in environmental governance. With 197 states parties, the Montreal Protocol aims to reduce the production and consumption of ozone-depleting substances, particularly chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs. Amendments to the protocol, such as Kigali Amendment, have expanded its scope to include the regulation of hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs, which are potent greenhouse gases contributing to global warming. The widespread adoption and effective implementation of this treaty underscores the potential of international cooperation in combating environmental crisis. Another landmark agreement is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which came into force on March 4, 1994. This convention laid the groundwork for international action against climate change, setting the stage for subsequent agreements such as Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreement. The Kyoto Protocol, adopted in 1997 and enforced in 2005, was the pioneering treaty that introduced legally binding commitments for industrialized nations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This protocol, ratified by 192 states, marked a significant step towards addressing climate change through enforceable targets. In contrast to the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement, established in 2015, adopt a more flexible approach through voluntary nationally determined contributions (NCDCs). Under this agreement, countries commit to reducing their carbon emissions to limit global temperature rise to well below 2 degrees Celsius, with efforts aimed at restricting it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The Paris Agreement emphasizes global cooperation, climate, finance and adaptation measures, recognizing the need for all the nations to contribute to mitigating climate change, while acknowledging the varying capacities and responsibilities of different states. The Convention on Biological Diversity (CBD), adopted in 1992 and enforced in 1993, is another critical international instrument with 193 state parties. This treaty promotes sustainable development while ensuring the conservation of biological diversity. It recognizes state sovereignty over biological resources and seeks to ensure the fair and equitable sharing of benefits derived from genetic resources. The complementing the CBD is the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety, which provides a regulatory framework to prevent potential risks associated with transboundary movement of genetically modified organisms (GMOs), thereby safeguarding biodiversity and human health. Cites the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, was signed in 1973 and came into effect in 1987. With 178 state parties, this treaty regulates and monitors international trade in endangered species, ensuring that they are not exploited to the point of extinction. Similarly, the Bonn Convention, also known as the Convention on Migratory Species, fosters international cooperation to protect migratory species and their habitats. Other crucial international agreements include the United Nations Conventions to Combat Desertification (UNCCD), which addresses and degradation in arid, semi-arid and subhumid regions. The UNCCD plays a pivotal role in promoting sustainable land management and rehabilitating degraded lands, particularly in the regions of Africa and Asia, where desertification poses severe threats to livelihoods and ecosystems. The Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, adopted in 1971 and effective from 1975, is another significant treaty focusing on conservation and sustainable utilization of wetlands due to their ecological importance in biodiversity, regulating climate and filtering water resources. The Basel Convention on the control of transboundary movements of hazardous waste and their disposal, in force since 1989 with 181 state parties, aims to regulate the movement of hazardous waste across borders, It prohibits dumping of toxic waste in developing nations and promotes responsible waste management practices. Additionally, the Rotterdam Convention, signed in 1998 and enforced in 2004 with 154 state parties, establishes a system for prior informed consent concerning hazardous chemicals and pesticides in international trade, ensuring that importing nations make informed decisions about potentially dangerous substances. The Minamata Convention on Mercury, signed in 2013 with 128 state parties, addresses the hazards associated with mercury pollution. It regulates industrial processing, mining activities, and improper waste disposal, aiming to reduce mercury emissions and mitigate its toxic effects on human health and the environment. India has played a proactive role in cooperating international environmental principles into its domestic legal framework. The Indian judiciary has often interpreted constitutional provisions such as Article 21, which guarantees the right to life, to include right to a healthy environment, clean air, and safe drinking water. Furthermore, Article 48A of Directive Principles of State Policy mandates the state to take measures for environmental protection and improvement. While India actively participates in international environmental negotiation, challenges persist in balancing economic development with environmental sustainability. The complexity of harmonizing economic growth with ecological conservation necessitates strategic policy making, long-term environmental security, resource constraints, and technological limitations further challenge India's capacity to adopt advanced clean technologies. However, India has taken significant strides toward sustainability through initiatives such as International Solar Alliance, which promotes renewable energy and fosters climate equity and technology transfer. India has also committed to achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2070 and aspires to become a global leader in green hydrogen, an alternative to fossil fuels with diverse application in industry and transportation. India's approach reflects its commitment to sustainable development, equity, and climate justice. By strengthening the domestic implementation mechanisms and enhancing international cooperation, India is poised to play a pivotal role in shaping the future of global environmental governance. With its rapid economic growth and increasing influence on the world stage, India is well positioned to lead efforts in combating climate change and promoting environmental sustainability for future generations. In conclusion, international environmental law serves as a cornerstone in shaping a sustainable future. Its effectiveness depends on the commitment of the states to uphold and implement its principles. Through sustained cooperation, responsible policy making, and technological innovation, the global community can ensure a balance between economic growth and environmental preservation. India, with its ambitious goals and proactive measures, is set to play a leading role in advancing global environmental governance and securing a greener and more sustainable future for generations to come. Thank you.